Welcome, everybody, to the Psychedelic Treatment Podcast. Your host, John Giordano. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones. I want to thank you for joining us today. And as we bring you more information about not just psychedelics, but all types of treatment modalities. But today we're going to be talking a lot about the psychedelics. But before we start, please, it's so important. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends. It means something. Also, leave comments, because every comment you leave means something to us, and we get to play off of that to figure out what we should talk about next. John, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. And you know, these podcasts, especially with the psychedelic part, you get to get good information that makes these journeys safe and not only beneficial. So that's what this is about. We don't want to just have people doing these medicines and think it's okay, because it's not okay if it's not done safely.
Absolutely. So with any treatment modality, whatever we talk about on this show, it's always supposed to be done with medical supervision. And don't go out and just experiment on things yourself. Go with a doctor or find a physician who works in those areas and try these modalities. But we don't do them on your own. John, that's where things get bad, is when people experiment on their own, right?
Yeah, we see they don't understand that there's medical conditions that can cause problems. Right. There's psychiatric conditions that can cause problems. And there's toxicology problems that can cause problems. If you have certain drugs on board, you can actually die.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, to put it simply, if we were to bring up acupuncture, go to an acupuncturist. Don't go to a carpenter who has really sharp nails. You want to make sure you go to the right places, right, John?
But then you really get nailed.
Oh, terrific. Listen, we got a great guest coming from, my old neck of the woods up there outside of Philadelphia. This is Jill Sitnick, who is an author, educator. She is trying to change the stigma and the way people think about using psychedelics for treatment of trauma. And, John, this is right up your alley, so let's bring her in.
All right.
Jill, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I think that was like the best intro ever about safety around psychedelics. And I'm totally going to steal that nail acupuncture analogy, though.
You can use it every time you want. Just send us $1 every time you use it, and we'll be good.
Understood.
So tell us a little bit about what you do, and, you know, what is your mission? And
yeah, well, so very, very easily, my mission is to destigmatize MDMA for PTSD therapy. MDMA is a synthetically created psychedelic in the early 1900s. There's been a lot of research. It's almost ready to be FDA approved in the United States come this summer. And I know that when I started the treatment in 2020, I had quite a bit of stigma around the use of psychedelics. It was my desperation with my PTSD that let me go ahead and do the therapy. And because the therapy works so well, I thought it was important to be a voice to explain to people what this therapy is, when it's safe, how to do it. Basically, the content that I wish had been around when I was going through the therapy. That's what I like to create.
All right. Well, you know, I don't know if you know this, but MDMA was shot down as far as utilization. I'm also a friend of Rick Doblin from MAPS.
Are you talking about the FDA advisory committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 10-2 vote. I don't know. Did you watch any of the meeting?
No, I didn't even bother. I'm a result player. I want to see the results.
Yeah, it was a slow moving train wreck. You could tell there was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. I really don't think it's going to play into the overall decision in August.
Here's the problem that, you know, that goes on with treating people with MDMA. First of all, they need two therapists, or they need a therapist, and I don't know what else they want to call it.
A guide.
Okay, right? And it's about 6 to 8 hour journey.
Yep.
And what happens is that it's not cost effective because of the way they got it structured. So I don't know about the insurance companies covering what they're supposed to cover.
Right.
Okay, so what they're trying to do is, remember, the pharmaceutical companies do not want any of these psychedelic medicines to come out. Okay, so they're doing their best, okay, to prevent it. But even so, what makes it even worse is the practitioners that don't know what they're doing the shamans. See, like a shaman, for instance, they know their village. They know the people in the village. Okay, so when they do this medicine, they know exactly who these people are. And, it's like a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're taking strangers on, they don't know their medical condition. They don't know what drugs are on board. So it becomes very dicey.
It can be very dicey. I'm very clear in my content to vet who you're working with. Make sure it's not someone that just did 3 psilocybin journeys and thinks they can save the world. The same way you would vet a medical doctor is the same way you should vet a psychedelic practitioner, and understanding where the medicine comes from and even testing it. So I'm very, very concerned about.
Okay, so and it goes a step further. I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
I don't know how much you know about ibogaine, but
Mhm.
ibogaine is a bush from West Africa.
Yep.
Okay, it was used by the Weedy tribe as a rite of passage,
Mhm.
and it started off with Howard Lutzoff. Howard Lutzoff was a heroin addict who decided to get a new high. He tried ibogaine, and he woke up the next morning detoxed.
Yep.
And without any cravings, he decided he opened up a place in Panama to make some money, to help other addicts and stuff like that. Also, he got a hold of Dr. Deborah Mash, who I work with. She's a pioneer in ibogaine. She's a neuroscientist.
Mhm.
And she worked with him for a little while, decided that it just didn't match for her. And we opened up in St. Kitts. And we did that in 1996. And we treated hundreds of people. And then they would come. I would do the integration therapy
Yep.
with them,
Mhm.
pre and post. And then we would take them to my treatment center, which was G&G Holistic Addiction Treatment Program in North Miami
Mhm.
Beach. And I would treat them.
Yep.
And I had to train my therapist how to talk with clients from ibogaine.
Sure.
Problem is this. Not a problem, but the way it needs to be done is we did a 24-hour heart monitor on them.
Yep.
Okay, so to make sure it's
With
not just a
stimulant.
snapshot, like
Mhm.
an EKG is not good enough. Then we check their liver, their kidneys,
Yep.
to make sure they're functioning properly. We make sure that certain drugs are not on board, certain SSRIs are not on board, because they can cause the heart where you not be able to breathe when you do an ibogaine, because it lowers your blood pressure and stuff like that. So then you make sure other drugs are not on board. They can cause other problems with your heart.
Sure.
So you had to do a toxicology test. And we did it in the States. And then when we went to St. Kitts, we did it again. And we repeated some of the medicals that we had to do with them. We would put them in. I would do the integration, have them have an intent and have them, what do you want to accomplish with this? And bring everything to the forefront of their brain. They would go and lay in on a bed. We would put an IV in their arm
Mhm.
in case there was any kind of an event, a heart monitor on them, okay, to monitor their heart function, and then eye shades and a headset on them to make sure we keep them in a containment field. We would give them a test dose, waited 45 minutes, and if they tolerated, then we gave them a full dose.
Booster. Mhm.
And then they would come out 8, 10, 12 hours, depending if they're fast metabolizer, slow metabolizer. And then I would talk with them what they saw in their journey and
Mhm.
help them to put pieces together for their life.
Mhm.
So that was the process. Now, a lot of people aren't doing that process. They're just giving them the medicine. They're talking to them. You want to know what their standard of care is.
Yes.
You can vet people all day long. That doesn't matter if you don't know their standard of care. They can have a great reputation because they're great marketers, let's say, or people are marketing for them.
Yeah.
Or you had people had a great experience. Okay, well, if they're healthy and everything, they'll have a good experience. But what about the people that are really not appropriate, like psychologically, schizophrenics, dissociative disorders? They don't belong with psychedelic medicine.
Agreed.
So that's the story for that.
Jill, let's talk about you for a second. As far as what you got involved in this because of childhood trauma.
Yes.
And you had said something right at the beginning. You said, "I wish this was around when I was dealing with it." Did you try other modalities, and why didn't they work?
Oh, actually, that's a fantastic question. So I did not know that my overwork, my anxiety behaviors throughout my adulthood were based in trauma. I just always kind of thought that's who I was. And my long-term partner, Carl, I also didn't know that this loving relationship in a lot of ways regulated my nervous system. So it wasn't until after he unfortunately passed, it was 18 months after he passed, that I had this horrendous panic attack that wouldn't go away just because of like a work email. So I can't say that I even thought I had a problem until my late 40s. And, you know, this stress of losing my partner and life going on, and all of a sudden this work email, that I went into this doom spiral, went back to my therapist. And after months of talk therapy, she said, I'm not seeing progress the way that I saw the progress with the grief, because I met my therapist basically to deal with grief. And it was that point I was diagnosed with PTSD. The talk therapy was not working, had not worked for months at that point. I was becoming increasingly suicidal. And that's when she shared with me that she was in a program to become a psychedelic-assisted psychotherapist. Go look at the information on maps.org around MDMA. And that's when I pretty much pivoted and went this direction for healing.
You never tried EMDR?
I had done EMDR back in my early 20s around a memory of my father coming up the stairs to beat me. And what I have found, this is a Jill Sitnick finding, is that the EMDR took away the fear. I can still see my father's face coming after me, but it took away the fear of that event. It did not take away the trauma of that event. That was a big night in my life.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Dr. Shapiro is the one that developed EMDR. Mm-hmm. And the problem is because of the psychiatric pushback, she kind of, I would say, watered it down a little bit. Oh. Okay. And I redeveloped it. I'm an NLP guy, and I'm a hypnotherapist at holotropic breathing. And the type of EMDR that I do works extremely well. And I'm teaching other people to do that. But if you get a good EMDR, besides the one I do, that knows what they're doing, that will help you tremendously. But sure, obviously the person you went to maybe wasn't as good. You know, all therapists are not good. You know.
I'm going to put a caveat on that. And I'm going to say, when a particular memory, this is my opinion, when a particular memory has layers of trauma attached to it, like that particular, my father coming up the stairs was part of a bigger issue. I don't know if you can, I think there's levels of trauma within different memories. And maybe if I had continued with EMDR, but the main focus at that point was to stop having nightmares and not believing my father was like around the corner.
That's the problem. You see, you got to go by the emotional response to that, not the trauma. So when you go to the emotional response, that hooks into other emotional responses that you had during your life, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. So it's like fear. So if you get rid of that fear, it travels down that pathway. You see, if you just go to that trauma, it doesn't work very well as far as I'm concerned. So we got to go to the emotions, not the actual act.
I'm just curious. You were saying that you went through a lot of your life without even realizing you were carrying all this trauma. John, that's pretty normal for a lot of people. I mean, not many people get out of their childhood and all of a sudden say, hey, that was messed up. I got trauma. It comes later on, right?
Yeah, I had PTSD. I got molested when I was a kid twice, when I was 8.5 and when I was 9. So I got traumatized. My uncle threw my wedding when I was 20. He's a hitman for the families. And the caterer insulted him, so he killed him. So you want to talk about trauma? I got a ton of trauma. Okay, so I'm very familiar with trauma.
I apologize for laughing, but that's a new one. That's a unique one right there.
I got left back in the 6th grade. I mean, I got all kinds of traumas. But no, it's great that you do this kind of work. So how do you approach the trauma? You do MDMA assisted therapy with people? I mean, what do you do?
Ultimately, that's going to be a goal. Up to this point, it has really been more of advocacy and letting people know what this therapy is. I just jumped into Third Wave psychedelic coaching program to continue to understand what you said in the very beginning, all of those contraindications, when to use what. I have, I think, a pretty good understanding. I wanted coursework to make sure that there was nothing I would skip kind of in my own research. So that's the ultimate plan, to sit with people, help people out, maybe retreat work. I love speaking. I love presenting. I'm a teacher at heart. So ultimately, as long as in some way, shape, or form, people are helped by my content and maybe in the future helped by me, I'm a happy camper.
That's very admirable, and I applaud you for that. And, you know, it's people like us that have been traumatized, and the stigma that we have inside of ourselves, never mind anybody else.
The shame.
You know what? If I can help you with anything, you let me know.
I will. I'm loving. We should have a whole other podcast on ibogaine iboga, because I just went to an iboga retreat and it was a fascinating medicine. Really, really deep.
Where'd you go? Mexico?
Jamaica. I went to a Jamaica retreat.
Oh, soon come, man.
Jill, your website, I'm inviting people to go see thejourneysage.com so they can learn more about what you do.
Thank
Also,
you.
you have a book out. I know you don't like to self-promote your books and stuff, but I'm going to do it for you. Rescuing Jill. Tell me about that book and where people can get it.
Well, so the book came out after my third journey. I had a huge breakthrough, and I sat up and said to my therapist and guide that people need to understand what this therapy is, because I knew it had worked before the third journey, but the third journey was just over the top in terms of healing. And so the memoir is that year of healing with me. I had kept journals. I was an English major way back in the day. I had journaled myself like crazy that year. And so it's like you're in the sidecar. It's like you're my best friend going through that year with me and seeing how trauma impacts thoughts and ideas. Some of the most feedback I get about the book is, well, Jill, none of that was true. Like, universe wasn't out to get you. Your father was just a jerk. And I'm like, that's not how a trauma brain sees things. That's not how a toddler who's getting beaten interprets the world. So that's what the memoir is. It's literally showing that this therapy is not turnkey. You both know you have to put the work in for this therapy to work. And it's just my story. One too many, I think, childhood stories, but you have to tell the childhood stories to explain the reframes. So yeah, that's what the memoir is.
Absolutely. You know, talk therapy deals with what I call the software of the brain. Psychedelics deal with the hard drive.
The programming.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what drives everything else. It's like if you erase something on the computer, it's still on your hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why therapy works to a certain point. It all depends how it's done. It all depends what you're talking about and the kind of work that the client does.
I like to say talk therapy is the sweeping the floor and psychedelics is the mopping.
All right.
Oh, I like that. So you got to clean and then you got to deep clean.
Exactly.
Or you're changing rooms and leaving everything alone.
That's interesting. That you wrote this book and you're sharing all of this. I'm sure this isn't what you started out to do. You weren't a kid saying, "Hey, I'm going to take all this trauma and write books about it and talk about it."
Right.
Your path changed. I mean, what was it before all of this happened, and where do you want to go now?
That was my next question.
Oh my gosh. I was an education technology gal. I was in a K-12 school district for 20 years. I was 10 years an English teacher, 10 years supervisor of technology. I got recruited to big tech. When I went through this therapy, I was actually working at Microsoft at the time. And the educational technology background has allowed me to do the website, to understand video editing, to make my YouTube channel. And I really appreciate all of that background and understanding adult learning theory and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just finding that now in this time of in my early 50s, and it's time to pivot a different way of helping people. I mean, I'm a teacher at heart. I've always been mission driven. So this is kind of just same road, maybe just making a little bit of a turn.
Gotcha.
Well, that's really good. See, we need people like you out there.
Thank you.
Well, we really do. I mean, because there's so much misinformation.
Yes. Yeah.
And people blame. They say ibogaine. People die from ibogaine. No,
not if they're being supervised.
But poor supervision is what they die
I
and
make a
people
point
don't-
of I make a point of telling people with psychedelics, treat psychedelics like any other medical procedure. Pay attention to dose, pay attention to your doctors, pay attention to where things are happening. If you look at psychedelics through that lens, number one, they make more sense. And number two, you'll be safer. Don't go do a handful of mushrooms in somebody's yard that you haven't measured, you don't know where they came from, and you have no idea what the weather's going to be. Don't do it.
Let me tell you something, and that's being done. You see, the pharmaceutical companies are really smart. They're going to let us destroy ourselves.
Mhm.
Because you got a lot of people that some people want to just make money off it. Some people really want to help people, but they don't know what they're doing. They think they do, and that's the dangerous part. And I'm glad you're on that page, because if you're going to go out there, that's why I have this podcast, the pros and cons of psychedelic medicine.
Yep.
You know,
The
so
pro is they can work. The con is that they're not turnkey, regardless of any of the marketing that you're going to see in the upcoming years.
So, like I said, if you're going to vet somebody, vet what they know, what's the procedure, how they keep you safe.
Yes.
And that's primary. And do they do integration therapy with it? If you're just throwing medicine at them, it doesn't work very well.
Or do you have another therapeutic, like on the Ibogaine retreat I went to, I wasn't super concerned with their integration process because I still maintain a relationship with my therapist. So I think as long as you have your supports in place.
But see, I have to say yes and no, because it's not the same. When I had my therapist trying to treat the Ibogaine clients, they were going, "Oh, they're in a pink cloud. Oh, they're too well." They had their biases because they didn't understand psychedelic medicine.
Sure. You need somebody who understands psychedelics. Yeah, right. I agree with you.
And I'll be honest with you, the best way to have anybody to do it is actually like I own the ketamine clinic. All the staff did ketamine.
Sure.
As a therapeutic intervention.
Yes.
So now when they're talking to somebody on ketamine, they know what the heck they're talking about.
1,000%. Do not go to a practitioner and talk about psychedelics if that practitioner does not have experience. Yeah, agreed.
Right. So that makes it stand out from a regular therapist.
Yes.
And that you have to take a look at too. There's a lot of moving parts on psychedelics that people don't quite know. They don't know. They want to get out of pain. They want to get out of all this discomfort, all this trauma.
Well, part of the problem too is that they're all labeled psychedelics, and everybody in this, in the room, the three of us, we know that different compounds work for different things. So that's part of the confusion, in my opinion. People are just saying psychedelics, and no, it's a psychedelic they work differently. So I think that's part of it.
It's interesting what you said, which was very astute. Dosage matters. Okay. A lot like Ibogaine is done by weight. Okay. Psilocybin is usually 200 milligrams for a complete journey, but depending on your body weight, if you're really light, they adjust the dosage that way. So I mean, and then you can do micro dosing. Okay, I think micro dosing is 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams. It all depends.
Sure.
So if you understand the dynamics, I know Paul Stamets. He's the one with this. Yeah, I had dinner with him and Rick Doblin and stuff like that. And these guys are really interesting. They're pioneers.
They are.
And you're a pioneer.
1,000%.
And you're a pioneer on helping people with PTSD. Okay.
Well, Rick Doblin needs to see the work I'm doing because all I do is support the work he's doing.
Well, they're having a lot of hard time, a lot of pushback.
Yes, they are. As Michael Pollan at the MAPS conference actually predicted. Like, this is not a surprise. Psychedelics have a long history of some really bad press. So this is not a surprise.
Well, people like to cherry pick things that that fit their view of the world.
Right.
They're not looking at, first of all, we only have about a 5 to 8, maybe a 10% recovery rate in mental health and substance abuse.
Right.
So why we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is beyond my understanding. So
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yep.
I think the insurance company want us to die. I'm serious.
Well, it feels like government.
Listen, they get
government instituted addiction. They want us on drugs for the rest of our lives.
Well, not only that,
as opposed to using them.
Listen, bottom line is that if we die, I'm a recovering addict also. I'm coming up on 40 years in recovery.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And if they don't have to pay for my treatments and my insurance, that's they're a business. I mean, why would they keep not allowing other things to help you? They're worried about, it's because it's not medically sound. Well, neither is SSRIs. Okay, Zoloft, this one, that one. People commit suicide, especially our vets. Yep. They're on 4 or 5 medications.
Huge number. Yep.
So,
Listen, we could talk about the procedures and the different psychedelics and all of that stuff all day long. I think what I'd really like, just because we got like a couple minutes left, what has changed for you? Because you were doing therapy before, it wasn't quite working, you were still having the panic attack, things were still happening. What has changed since you started using these new modalities for you?
The ability, I'm actually going to phrase this, the ability to understand who I am without the trauma, the ability to feel joy, the ability to get excited about the future, the way that this is hindsight being 2020, the way that all of the medicine work has worked with my particular trauma and 19 years of being kind of marinated in abuse and neglect. What the medicine has done has kind of taken layers off of me. Like I imagine a little toddler with like blanket, 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 neglect, abuse. And the medicine has allowed me to release those blankets. And I would say, I feel more me versus being reactive to things that are happening in my environment. And so I may have answered that question a little too deep, but that's really what it comes down to.
You answered it
perfect. My daughter dealing with her trauma and stuff, she said it was like I've been watching black and white television all my life, and all of a sudden one day I turn it on and it's in full color, and it changes my whole life. And my daughter said that.
That's beautiful. That's a great way to explain it too.
Yeah. So, and John, you've seen people where the light comes on and they change, like the veil being lifted, right?
The people that I work with is like, I had one woman, I never forget this one, this recently actually. Her son got murdered, and her daughter is the one that set up the murder. Plus, she's an addict. Okay. Plus, she had to take care of the kids for her daughter. She hated her daughter and loved her daughter, and it was a really bad trauma. Yeah. So I did the technique on her, and then she got to separate the pieces of what she needed to do.
Yes.
But like I said, I don't go, what this program's about, and is about educating people about, even my guests sometimes, about the safety measures that we have to take. Sure. And I want to push the psychedelic medicine forward in the proper venue. I don't want it just to, do psychedelics to get rid of your trauma. No. It's
a medical procedure that needs to be taken with the importance of a medical procedure. If you're not looking at it in that light, you're not going to have the success that you're looking for, in my opinion.
Yeah, the amazing thing always, and as we always say on this show, everything changes. We're constantly growing. And if we stop, we're not doing enough for people. Addictions and trauma, mental health, these issues are still winning. Yeah. They're winning. We're not beating any of these things. We're still way behind. So we got to try new things. We never would have considered this stuff 30 years ago. Now we're looking at it and it's working. What we're going to be looking at tomorrow, who knows? But if we don't keep an open mind, John, we're never going to win this battle.
Well, they got a lot of things on the table. They got gene splicing going on. They got a lot of stuff. They're finally talking about the gut, which is a second brain, where you can get depression, low testosterone, leaky gut, H. pylori infection. All of these are low thyroid. All of these are precursors for depression and anxiety. Now we're looking at it. When you were with me 20 years ago, I looked at this.
Yeah, it wasn't sexy enough to go to the front, though. Nobody wanted to do anything about it.
Oh, yeah, the guts. Yeah, okay. Now, next, now they ask me, well, what do you do for it?
Well, I don't think there was an understanding of mind and body. I know I didn't understand trauma lives in the body until I read The Body Keeps the Score. Like, I
That's
think
right.
there are just generations of people like myself that don't. If we think we have mental things to deal with, we start talking and we're in here. When in reality, getting into the body,
It's a system.
it's a whole system. And I know I wasn't brought up thinking that way.
Jill, that's well said. Well said.
Most of your serotonin dopamine is manufactured in your gut. You got more neurons in your gut than you got in your brain. Goes up the vagus nerve and deposits the serotonin dopamine into your brain. Then there's genetics. There's a lot of stuff involved.
Yeah.
We're a system. We're not just a head walking around.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
With little feet.
Deal with things like trauma, mental health, addictions, and all that stuff. You're never going to outthink these things. And I think a lot of people think, I'm a smart guy. I'll figure this out. I'll just find a way to bury it and hide it and do all of that.
Yep.
And then next thing you know, you're raising your hand at your kids and you don't even know why you're doing it.
And then the shame of
these
not being able to get over it.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. God,
shame, guilt, all kinds of stuff go into play.
Yeah, I talked over you. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. This is such a good conversation, but we are coming up on the end of our time.
Okay.
Jill, again, please check out her website, thejourneysage.com. Her book is there. You have a workbook that goes with your book as well, too, right?
I do. For folks who are getting started, intention settings, it's basically stealing the 8 different ways that my therapist and I came up with my intentions for my therapy.
All right, well, don't say that on the air because now you gotta give them money because
she's okay with it. She helped me write it. She's good.
So right now, somebody's sitting out there and they're suffering.
Yeah.
And they know it's part of their childhood, or they got a hint, or they're not sure what to do, and they're really just afraid to even talk about it. What do you want to say to those people right now?
Well, not wanting to talk about it is a sign of shame, and shame cannot live in the dark. So shame cannot live in the light. I said that incorrectly.
Yes, I got you.
Share it with someone and you'll notice that what you thought was a 10, they might think is a 1. And that's kind of the path and the start of healing, to understand that you're really not by yourself when you're having these kind of thoughts. And then start looking at clinical trials for whatever your diagnosis is, and start thinking about what would be the best healing modality for you. Because as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, there are a variety of healing modalities, and we're all different and we're all comfortable with certain things. And just keep an open mind, because talk therapy is not the only thing out there. That would be my advice.
That's
Thank
great.
you. That was brilliantly said.
Yeah, it's very well said. If you want to know more about me, us, you go to Giordano.com. And I also am one of the owners of JC's Recovery Center. It's a faith-based program, and we incorporate all the latest technologies for healing the brain and the body.
Mm-hmm.
Plus we also talk about ibogaine and other psychedelic medicines that we can't do here in the United States, but we know places to send them to get the best care.
Ibogaine is amazing for addiction. Anybody facing an addiction issue, follow these guys about ibogaine.
Anxiety, quitting smoking. It's an amazing. Awesome. Well, it's on top of the food chain of all the other medicines. Actually, it
is. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's for beginners, but I will say it's an amazing healing medicine.
It's very powerful. And they say it's a Schedule I drug, which is so comical. In order to be a Schedule I drug, it has to be highly addictive. Believe me, you don't want to do this all the time.
You don't get addicted to it.
I want to spend a couple of days in hell. I mean, what the hell? And it has no medical benefits, which is not true.
Not true.
So it's all a lie based on a lie. That's all it is.
Every time there's something new, you're going to get pushback. Every time you bring out a new idea, somebody's going to say it doesn't work or it's bullshit. It's going to happen.
Believe me, I know about that.
And you know that, John, because you've been bucking the system for years, since I've known you, and well beyond that. You've been bucking the system, saying, we need to be more holistic. And then you went that direction, and all of a sudden everybody's saying we're all holistic now. And it's
what they call holistic is doing yoga.
Yeah.
Okay, yoga is important, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, they start the word holistic with a W. I mean, these are those people out there. They're just crazy. But I want to thank you, Jill, for not only for your message and your inspiration, but for your courage in talking about these things and helping people to understand we don't need to live in shame and guilt and all that stuff. And you're absolutely right. Great way to kill shame and guilt. Bring it to the light of day, and it dies really, really quickly. It's like a vampire.
Well, it's like I always say, if you're in a dark room, no matter how big the dark room, you light a match, you see that light everywhere in that room. Yeah. So light is more powerful than darkness. So if you bring it into the light, it'll
that's where it can heal
everything else.
Yeah.
Excellent. And hey, go Eagles, right?
Apparently, yeah. That's what I'm supposed to say. And the Sixers, I can't forget the Sixers. Yes, over here.
Oh, apparently you're not from Philly. Oh my!
I'm not a sports person.
Okay. All right, we'll let you slide on that.
Okay.
Do you like cheesesteaks?
Yeah.
Then you're good.
Probably have had it my fill living in this part of the country.
Hey, thank you, Jill, so much for joining us. John, great show once again. And all of you out there, I want to remind you that if you like the show, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and certainly share it with your friends. If you didn't like the show, subscribe to it twice and share it with 2 friends until we convince you that you should like it, right?
That's right.
That'll work. Okay, everybody out there, you've been watching the Psychedelic Treatment Podcast with your host, John Giordano. I'm Scott Jones, and for our guest, Jill Sitnick, we want to thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.